Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. I'm your host, David Steele. I hope everybody's having a fantastic weekend so far. Um, and I just went out to see, the movie of the year so far, in my opinion. Um, and it's going to be breaking all kinds of records. And I'm going to be doing a spoiler cast later on today, so come back for that. And that is Across the Spider Verse. So, quick little brief thing. So, I went to go see this yesterday. I was going to go see it Thursday, had a little issue, um, but I decided to see the 2D version, and I wish I had saw it in IMAX. This movie, now, mind you, let me backtrack a little bit. I saw Into the Spider Verse the day before. Um, my God, and I loved Into the Spider Verse, by the way. It was just an unbelievable movie. Everything about it was funny. It was a little bit emotional. You could tell it was really tender love and care put into it. My God, this movie was, I always talk about sequels that are surpassing the original films, and they're few and far between. I mean, I have to go back for a second watch of this. I want to do that this weekend, but I was blown away. Absolutely stone cold blown away. And there's nothing else to say about it. This movie would had everything I wanted in a Spider-Man movie. It was funny. It was emotional. It was heartfelt. It was action-packed. It was everything I wanted and more. And the way it ended, and I'm gonna be, as I said, I'm gonna be doing a full spoiler cast 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Come back and join me for that. But it was just in this movie. I'm going to talk about some of the numbers for that too, and it's well deserving. I can't wait for Beyond the Spider Verse. I'll just say that much right now. I cannot wait. But that all being said, so what I thought I'd do today is, and I usually stream them, so it is June 3rd. Okay, we just crossed the first week of June. Um, and I thought what we'd do. So Dad says I'll have to avoid the spoiler cast at 6. I haven't seen it yet. You're gonna love it. That's all I'm gonna say to you. You're going to love it. I'm just there are not enough superlatives to put into a sentence to say what kind of movie this is. Um, and you're gonna. I want to go back and see it again. And my only regret is I didn't see it in IMAX first. If you have the chance, go see this in IMAX. So yeah, no, but definitely when you see it, come back or watch it after and just enjoy it. So you're gonna love it. So as I was saying, speaking of sequels, that because I was talking about sequels, right? And I was say, oh, it's hard to make I mean, I can count on both my hands basically how many sequels are better than the original. Okay, I mean, you have Empire Strikes Back, which we did for a perfect movie. We have Captain America: Winter Soldier, which we did for a perfect movie. You've got The Godfather 2. You've got, I mean, they're very, very few and far between. And we're going to be doing another this is our perfect movie series. And I'm going to be talking about a film today that is a perfect movie, in my opinion. I watched it the other day. Unbelievable. I've seen it like 4 or 5 times, but it doesn't get old. And it's a sequel. And I've always said sequels are difficult. And today's perfect movie is The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight is one of those movies that not only changed, you know, cinema and Hollywood, how it was made, but it changed it really at the ground roots. So, quick little backtrack. This movie came out right in the middle of July, believe it or not. So, about a month ago, 15 years ago. We're going to be celebrating its 15th anniversary coming up next month. So, This was, of course, directed by one Christopher Nolan, who, by the way, has another little movie coming out, you know, um, in July as well, and that is Oppenheimer. And so stay tuned for that. We'll be doing a spoiler cast for that when that comes around. But this was just a remarkable movie. So when he went into Warner Brothers, he had a vision and an idea of what he wanted to do for a sequel. And really, he had everything mapped out. He had it all mapped out. He had the three films mapped out, and that was fantastic. And it was fascinating because Batman Begins is one of those movies by Nolan that is a good movie. It's not perfect by any means, but it's good enough to tell the origin story of a Batman. And by the way, you got to remember, this is almost the fourth or fifth Batman film franchise trilogy person that's played this. Okay, I mean, we've had people like Michael Keaton over the years, we've had Val Kilmer, we've had George Clooney. So, this is a different iteration of Batman. But this one was more grounded. This one was darker. This one was more hard hitting. And you could tell right out of the gate. Um, so when Batman Begins comes out, okay, it's one of those things where this is a different kind of Batman. I mean, we just got the Batman last year, which was a grittier Batman. And so, I mean, Matt Reeves even takes, little motifs and nuances from all of these films, from the 89 Batman to the 66 Batman to this film, The Dark Knight, and everything else. And it was just incredible. So Batman Begins, it's interesting. When Batman Begins was released, okay, it had a budget of 180. Let me write this. Get this. It had $150 million budget, which is quite steep back then. I mean, we're still talking 15 years ago, so it's not like it's okay. It made only, and I say only, okay, $373 million worldwide. That's not. I mean, when you're talking about films making money, I mean, it made $48.5 million opening weekend. Okay, so we're not talking about a blockbuster, even though it is one of their biggest perennial IPs of all time. That all being said, it was good, but it wasn't great. So when The Dark Knight comes out, okay, in 08, July 18th of 08 is when it was actually released to the public. And you got to remember, too, this is really before like Twitter and everything else. So word of mouth was still, it's not like you had instantaneous word of mouth. Okay. So it's not like I could just hop on Twitter and say, oh, this was a good movie, blah, 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 and hit send, and then it goes off in the internet feed. Okay. And it gets, liked and retweeted and everything else. No. This is still of the age of, Facebook was still starting, Twitter was still starting, things like that were still coming around. So you didn't have that instant communication that like you do today. I mean, you put out a tweet for, let's say, Across the Spider-Verse, and it goes viral. So it's a completely different thing. So a couple of the numbers for the Dark Knight, which is always fascinating to me because, as I've always said, it is business. Okay? The budget of this movie was $185 million. So he got a little bit more. Okay? Opening day, when this was released on the 18th of July in 2008, okay, Friday, and you got to remember too, this is before the age of Thursday night premieres. It's like Spider-Verse just made $17 million on Thursday. Right? Like that. There were no Thursday premieres. There were no Thursday premieres. Or very few, if that. This made $67 million opening day. $67 million. Okay? It went on to gross over $1 billion worldwide. 51st all time. With about $1 million ahead of... so it just missed out of the top 50, and it just... the Hobbit, the first Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, was about $1 million in front of it. So it made $1,600,000. $535 million domestic, which is great, phenomenal. I mean, I think benchmarks. I mean, obviously, you have things like Star Wars and the Avengers and everything else, but you take a look at something like, and I'm going to put it to it, like Black Panther. Black Panther made $700 million domestic. That tells you something. So, $158 million opening weekend. So it made nearly 3 times its opening weekend. Okay. Second weekend, it made $75 million, and it only dropped by that 50% marker that I'm always talking about. Um, so yeah, money aside, okay, money aside, this was an incredible film. This was a perfect film, and so I sat down and I watched it, and there are so many different elements to this film that is fantastic. And first and foremost, it's the cast. Okay, because and that's the thing. When we fan cast, even when we're casting, we say, "Oh, well, we want this person to play Superman, or we want this person to play that, or what." This is before the days of. Don't forget, this was the same year that Iron Man came out. Marvel was just barely getting started, so we have all this fan casting. You know, so one of the big things of this, okay, was the cast, right? So Christopher Nolan had put it upon himself to cast, um, I think, one of the great actors at the time, Christian Bale. Okay, and with this, okay, so anybody who's not too familiar, there's Maggie Gyllenhaal right there, Aaron Eckhart, of course, Heath Ledger in the middle playing the incredible Joker, which we'll get to in a few minutes, and then Christian Bale, and of course, Nolan's on the right. So couple quick stories. Maggie Gyllenhaal came in for Katie Holmes because I think with scheduling conflicts or she wanted too much money or whatever else. So it was a very easy switch, right? They could just put one actress in instead of the other. No big deal. Aaron Eckhart, okay, Christopher Nolan had actually seen him in the movie Thank You for Smoking. Thank You for Not Smoking. And so that's how he came on Nolan's radar. So he said, "Oh, I want this guy." Okay. And so the other two, okay, it was one of those things where, I mean, look, Heath Ledger had several different films out there, okay, including The Patriot and others, Brokeback Mountain and everything else. And I think Brokeback actually happened after. But nonetheless, an amazing actor, okay, that didn't never got enough credit, okay. Um, and how he transformed himself. It's still one of the most eerie characters to this day. And then, of course, Christian Bale. If you didn't know, you wouldn't think he's British. He's British. He has an accent. So it's just amazing how they were able to drop that. And then, of course, Nolan's there on the right, and he had a plethora of different films out. Inception, Memento, and all of these other films. So he knew what he wanted. So it all really started with the casting. But so even starting, okay, the beginning of the film, okay, and I'm not going to go beat by beat by beat, but how we're introduced to the Joker is just incredible. Because let's face it, when you are introduced to a protagonist or an antagonist, you want to get to know a little about them and everything else. And how they introduce and they go in for the bank robbery. And it's just like amazing. So when he shoots the guy, and he's on the ground, and he's basically almost going to die. He's like, there's no honor among thieves, and he's like, "What do you believe in?" And he's like, "Well, I believe what doesn't make you, hurt you, does makes you stranger." And of course, he takes off the mask, and we actually see the Joker's face, and it's like, and then one of the proxies says, "Well, he should have had him bring a bigger car." With that's a lot of money. And of course, he shoots the guy. Ledger completely transformed this character into what he wanted, okay, and how he did it. And it's one of the most bone-chilling, crazy, maniacal villains I think of the last 45 years, 50 years. I really do. I mean, when we talk about villains, we always talk about, Darth Vader and Hannibal Lecter and maybe, um, the guy from Psycho and everything else. But Ledger's right up there. This iteration of the Joker is right up there. And it's incredible. Um, and that being said, that's what makes him so, crazy and off the wall. Um, like even this is the scene where he goes in to face the mom, right? Where he basically he comes in, he's laughing, and says, you know, who is this guy? So he's like, I'm going to, I'm going to make this pencil disappear, and he kills one of the guys, by slamming his head into the pencil, and he's so one of the guys is like, let's hear what he has to say. And he's like, well, you have to kill the Batman. And he basically blackmails him up. But how he does it. And then he comes out and he has all these chains. He's so suicidal. He doesn't care who he takes down. And that's the amazing thing. Um, and, so the one of the other things. So early on in the film, we see that, Scarecrow is a proxy in this film. Okay. Even though he was still a proxy in Batman Begins, but he was, we're finishing up this storyline. And I love how in the garage sequence, okay, all you see is the Batmobile, and it just says, loiter and then intimidate. You don't see anybody in it, okay, because it's all remote, because Batman's somewhere else. And, so he eventually takes down Scarecrow and everything else. But, and then all these other Batman, they think that they're trying to do good, and basically it's like, what's it? One of the guys says, well, what's the difference between you and me? It's like, I'm not wearing hockey pads, you know. Um, so there was a little bit of comedy in there too. Um, so as I said earlier, one of the things about the casting in this movie, okay, if you don't have a good villain, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to believe that it's for the protagonist to actually win, right? Or you want them to be as good, if not better, than the hero because you want a battle. You want that struggle. You want that battle at the end. And so one of the things is the casting. And I keep going back to the casting. Okay. So Aaron Eckhart, I mean, what he did with Two-Face and how he did it with Harvey Dent playing two different roles was incredible. And there's only been a few other kinds of actors, okay, to be able to pull it off. Um, Mike, I can think of a couple off the top of my head. Michael Fassbender in Prometheus. Forget about the film itself, but the actor, okay? Then you have Tom Hardy in Legend. It's very difficult. I mean, Armie Hammer in The Social Network, but it's very difficult to play two different kinds of characters like that. Because you have to, you have to be both people. And so, all of that being said, it's just what he did with this character, and this will be later on in the film, as we all know, is incredible. This shot here, I for sure thought my money was on. Now they got nominated for best makeup. They got nominated for 5 Academy Awards, and it won 2. One of them was sound design. Okay. The other one was, of course, the late Heath Ledger ended up winning. By the way, he would have won regardless. He was definitely the best performance of that year. Now, the crew that they lost to was a curious case of Benjamin Button. So, I mean, you can see why they lost. This, I think, is one of the best makeup jobs I've ever seen. Hands down, bar none, without a doubt. Okay. But yeah, so I mean, Aaron Eckhart being able to play both characters. I mean, there's that scene when they're at dinner. They're all at dinner, and basically he says, and this could be true of, you know, of life too. You can either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And it's just like, that's true. That's very true. And, so it was just an amazing way to show that. And going back to this mob scene again, okay, it was just one of those things I said, I love so later on in the film, we get this cross cutting, okay, because Gordon is actually going to go in and they're going to raid all these banks. And I love how the fact that we get Lau's voiceover, okay, with the mob, okay, and it's like, well, I had to move all your money, this, and this. As I said, the Joker was an amazing thing. The first time we see everybody together, the 360 shot on the roof, unbelievable. And by the way, it's used a couple times in this movie, and it's not a bad thing. Okay, one thing that and look, there's only so many different shots you can do when you're filming, right? And so when it's used effectively, it's one of the greatest shots ever used. And so that scene when they're on the roof and that slow 360 and they're all talking, it's done so well. And so he goes to visit Lucius, of course, and he talks to him and he says, you want it, that's a nice suit. I mean, and by the way, I'm not even talking about Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman, even though we don't see him that much in this film, he's still very, very good. I mean, there are so many different images from this film that you could just put as wallpaper. I mean, it's like Spider-Verse 2, which I'll be talking about later today. I mean, this is one of those films, later in the film, after they think the Batman's been eliminated, this is one of the crazy shots, where he says, what are you going to do with all your money? He's like, well, I'm a cheap guy. I like cheap things, dynamite, gunpowder and gasoline. And so he proceeds and he's like, the guy's like, what are you doing? And he's like, yeah, I'm only going to burn my half. But, I mean, everything Ledger was just, I can't gush enough about it. But let's move on real quick because the Hong Kong sequence. And I don't have any pictures of that, but the Hong Kong sequence is something that is just the way that was shot. And by the way, this is before the days of drones and everything else. Okay, or they were just starting to figure the drones out. I mean, he's standing on top. You get a wide shot, and he pans in. Okay, and we get him on top of that huge building, and he just jumps. I mean, we got to see Batman in action, and that whole Hong Kong sequence of him getting the guys and how he's going to get Lau back to the United States, and how it's done. It's incredible. I mean, you even get the comedy with Alfred when they cancel the ballet, right? And it's like one of those things where this movie has everything you want. It's a crime thriller. It's action packed. There's a love triangle. Okay, it's funny in certain situations, and it knows when it needs to be funny, and it's dramatic. And when you can mix all of those elements together, that comes in to be a perfect movie. And that's what this is. I mean, as I said, whether it was Morgan Freeman with the blackmail scene, when he's talking with the executive there, or it's talking about the suit or anything else. This film is, and let's talk about, speaking of action, let's talk about that other scene in the street with that whole sequence underground. Okay, when the Joker is trying to blow up that truck that has dent in it because he thinks that's Batman, and I thought it was kind of humorous. I mean, that's just the Joker's mentality. He writes the S on there instead of laughter; it's slaughter. um, But just that whole, and then, so they get up above, and that truck, how they flip that truck, and how one of the cool things about this, among other things, okay, was the toys. It was all of the toys that Bruce/Batman got to play with. And this is one of the little toys, okay, in the tumbler. And, that's, in the first film, he's like, yes, Mr. Wayne, it does come in black, you know. So, so this is his new Batmobile. And we see the different iterations of all of these things over the years. And even when that Batmobile gets banged up, okay, we think, okay, well, he doesn't have anything to drive anymore. Lo and behold, what comes out of it? The Bat Pod. And this is that sequence I was talking about with the truck. And it's so good in so many different ways. Yeah, and even so, the Batman, the new the Batman film that just came out, took all. That's why it was so good. I mean, a lot of people, I won't say a lot of people, some people have problems with the third act. It was good. Okay. The first two acts were magnificent. The third act was good, which made it a very good movie. Definitely not perfect. But what Matt Reeves did is he was bright enough that he incorporated um, all of these different things from all of these different Batman features, television. So anybody who has seen the film knows, okay, there are little Easter eggs in the whole film, whether it is the statue when Alfred's opening the letter there, okay, whether it's when Bruce drives up in that car, it's right out of the 1966 Batmobile, okay, or you have the scene where he's talking with the Joker near the end, or the Riddler, okay, I'll get to that scene in a minute because that's one of the top 25 scenes ever put on film. But whether he's talking with the Riddler, okay, all of these nuances were put together. And when they're put together, that's what kind of film you get, a phenomenal film. So one of the greatest sequences, and I was just referencing it, one of the greatest sequences ever put on film, hands down, bar none, and I challenge anybody on this, okay, is the interrogation scene. It's the interrogation scene. After the Joker gets caught, and, so the first thing you see is he's sitting in the cage, perfectly still. And then when the mayor comes in, he's like, you're going to take the big job. And so he's clapping, like, and of course, everything's custom done, so there's no identification. So he goes in and he's sitting down, and he's talking with Gordon. And he's like, well, the mayor never made it home. Or Dent never made it home. He's like, well, who did you leave him with? He's like, cool, who did you leave him with? Are they your people? Assuming they're still your people and not Maroney's. So he's like, and of course, you have the white face. It's completely pitch black behind him. And then of course the light is from the other side, and just from a lighting sequence, it's perfect. And he says, well, I'm going to need a cup of coffee. I'm going to need a cup of coffee. He's like, oh, good cop, bad cop. He's like, not exactly. And so the Batman, Batman's standing there and he just slams his head on the table. He's like, never start with the head. It's fuzzy. So, and then they have that exchange. And it's one of the greatest exchanges in all of cinema. Even that when he's, he puts the chair against the door and that camera is tilted on its side because he slams him on the table and we're seeing it from his point of view. Everything about this was taken with such care and such, it was just so well done. And I'm not even talking. So all of this stuff I've been mentioning has been all the action. Okay. Let's talk about the whole love triangle, because that's a huge part of this movie. Okay. Because he's still in love with Rachel, but of course Rachel is with Harvey now, and even going back to the near beginning of the film, and he says, you're interested in the new DA or social circles, and of course, meaning Rachel, and she's like, he says, I don't care who Rachel spends her time with, but he's still in love with her, and there's that scene, right in the middle of the film where he's about to wanting to give up, and he says, if I give myself up, can we be together? And of course, Harvey, you know, wants to marry Rachel, unbeknownst to Bruce. And so, I mean, there's that whole party scene, right? When the Joker comes in, this is tonight's entertainment. Just so many different ways. His performance, Ledger's performance, I mean, look, Christian Bale did a remarkable job. The acting in this, for the four people that were in this, the 3 or 4 people that were in this, did an incredible job. Okay, now Morgan Freeman isn't there, but they all did an incredible job. Okay, from what Maggie Gyllenhaal was given to Aaron Eckhart playing 2 different people, to Heath Ledger just knocking it out of the park, to Christian Bale, playing Batman. Hands down. The acting in this movie is so superior. And I'm not even talking about something that I haven't even mentioned yet. There's one big thing I haven't mentioned, and it's this. A lot of the critics, a lot of the pundits, and everybody, not just on film Twitter, because you got to remember, film Twitter wasn't, back then, there wasn't any film Twitter, okay? A lot of people in a lot of different circles believed that The Dark Knight should have been nominated for Best Picture. And it wasn't. So you have to remember, there were 5 films at that time. There always had been 5 films that had been nominated for Best Picture. Up until that point. A lot of people, said, why is this not one of the top 5 films of the year? So what the Academy did was, they said, you know what? We're going to go to 10. We're going to go to 10 films. And for many years after that, they nominated 10 movies. And so I think a couple years ago, they went to going from a hard 10 to up to 10. So some years you'll see 7, some years you'll see 9, some years you'll see 6, some years like last year you saw 10, but they can go up to 10. And grassroots basically changed cinema, and how it was done for the award season, and it's just an incredible thought in that respect, that you have this movie that this guy makes in Nolan, and look, this is another iconic shot of after Rachel, when she gets, so the bombs go off. Gordon goes to try to save Rachel. Dent is saved by Batman. So this is the shot where he's standing in the rubble, looking down, and he finds Harvey's coin. And of course, that's how he gets the name Two-Face. Of course, early on in the film, Gordon and Dent were talking, like, I investigated some of your people, but he never says the name, right? Of course, another brilliant thing, because we leave it till later on. That being said, this is one of those scenes, as I said, or those shots that just, it's amazing. And so he finds the coin. And one side it was a 2-headed coin. And, one side was fine and the other side was burnt. And then the next shot you see, okay, is when he goes to place it at Harvey's bedside table, okay, when he's in the hospital. And, it's one of those things, Gordon comes in and they have that exchange. And even how he was introduced. Let's talk how Two-Face was introduced for a minute, okay? Basically, like, he came in, he's like, Harvey, I'm sorry, who was the people that, Rachel, who picked up Rachel? He's like, why would you believe me now? He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, who was it? And so, he turned his head briefly, and then the editing was just magnificent. And then he turns his head back, so you see the, unburnt portion of his face, and he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, no, you're not, but you will be. So, and that's the first shot you see, and it's just like, wow. This film, on so many different levels, from the stunts to the acting to the love triangle to everything about it. I mean, I think personally, this is, um, I think this is Christopher Nolan's masterclass. I do. I look. I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of Nolan movies. Okay, Inception, Memento, you know, all these other films. Um, I think that Inception, Memento, Dunkirk, you know, Insomnia, and some, which was rated R, and Oppenheimer just got an R rating, first one in 20 years. The point is, this is his master class. Absolutely, hands down, without a doubt in my mind. Um, I've made some notes. The interrogation scene, and so really once Rachel, so I have here the start of the. So this is really two movies in one, right? You have the whole thing with the Joker, and then once Dent becomes Two-Face, it's the start of the second movie. Okay, because now you have Dent and Two-Face, and so that being said, he lets the Two-Face off the chain, you know, and so it's an amazing thing in and of itself. Um, you have like I said, the great juxtaposition of Rachel's voiceover, the destruction that was left by the Joker in that letter that, she talks to Alfred and said, well, why isn't he turning himself in? And he has to endure and everything else. And of course, she's going to marry Harvey. But Batman doesn't know that. Or Bruce doesn't know that. And so, it's that shot where he's like, well, what's that? He's like, it can wait. You know. But yeah, so so let's move to the third act. Okay. So we've touched upon all of this. Let's move to the third act of this movie. Okay. And the third act is after Two-Face is out. Okay. And by the way, that they blow up that hospital. Christopher Nolan said Heath Ledger was so professional during that scene. Okay. Because it was really like a one take type of thing. And he waited and then he turned around and then the whole thing, it was just magnificent. So let's go to the third act. Okay. So this is when he gets Mike Engel. Okay. And he ends up killing him, but he's, uses him as his messenger. And so it's that shot in the bar. And so he's going to blow up, something. So they put everybody on the ferries. I mean, the roads are packed. They put all these people on the ferries. And so it's right there. It's a morality test, right? And it's one of those things where who's going to, we always talk about second chances. Who's going to get a second chance? Is it those people that have committed crimes? Or is it everybody else? And that's what the Joker says. He basically says, if you don't blow up one of the ferries by midnight, you all die. So he's facing people with a test. And how it's done, it's just, I mean, you can really talk about that and say, okay, how it's, I guess the thing is how it's done because it's the morality of it, right? Who should live and who should die? And basically, when Batman captures the Joker, he says, everybody just showed you that they're full of good because, you know, um, so it was just an incredible scene. So so as the film's closing, let's talk about real quick the lighting. So we see Dent there where Rachel's explosion happened. And so Gordon gets a call and basically he has his family and says, where are you? And he's like, well, where my family died. So we go to the building. And so we see, you know, um, we see the wife and the children, okay? And then Two Face is there. One of the first shots when he grabs his son, okay, it's an amazing shot of the great light and the great darkness. So what you're seeing is Two Face in his full form, if you will. Like we see Harvey's face, but we also see the darkness that is engulfing his face and what he wants to be because of his anger. And, Gordon had said, I'm sorry. And he's repeating this. And then Batman comes. And then it's just, even that little lighting thing goes a long way toward the character. Um, and so, even when he's like, okay, point the gun at the people who are responsible. Okay. So he shoots Batman. And then he, you know, as the coin's up in the air, he, you know, hits Two Face, and the coin lands on heads, the clear side of heads, and by this time he's hanging off the ledge. But that in itself, landing on that side of the coin, symbolizes good, symbolizes everybody can be good, and I mean, even he said, look, that's why Harvey wanted you because he took the best of the best and he brought you down, you know. Um, but him that coin landing just like that was exactly why. It was a very pertinent thing. And of course the ending sequence, the voice, he's talking with his son. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, the Dark Knight. And it still gives me chills every time I hear that for Gordon because this script was so well written. I mean, there isn't a miss. This film's almost 2.5 hours, okay, and it's just there isn't a false note to it. There isn't a false note. Um, I just it's an amazing 2 hours and 32 minutes, but you wouldn't think it's 2 hours and 32 minutes, right? You wouldn't think that at all. And so I think that's incredibly important because, I mean, we're always talking about run times and everything else. And this is before 3-hour films. I mean, we've been in a culture of the last 4 or 5 years of, oh, this film's too long or this film's too short. I mean, The Irishman was 3 hours and 30 minutes. Killers of the Flower Moon was 3 hours and 29. It's going to be 3 hours and 29 minutes. Babylon was 3 hours. Way of Water was 3:02, or Endgame was 3:02. Babylon was right around 3 hours. This was 2 hours and 32 minutes. And it didn't seem like it at all because you were so invested in everybody, in all of the characters, in all of the main substantial characters. And there's so many different things about this, in so many different, I go back to the casting, but more importantly, there's so many different, like, and you're going to see this when you go to see this tonight, Dad, you're going to see the animation of this movie. You could take every single frame and frame it. Literally. That is how good they did. Um, But there's all these different, whether it's this shot here, okay? I mean, this is one shot, you know, or this shot, where it's the the first reveal of Two-Face, okay? Or this shot here. I mean, these are all individual things. Or, I mean, the back pot. I mean, or this shot. I mean, there's so many individual shots that you could pull from this movie. And you could say that about any movie, sure. But it's one of those things where if you can find 4, 5, 6 of these shots, you go, wow, that's really good. And that's what this involves. Um, yeah, I always say it. And I mean, it's a perfect movie. And I'm not saying it because it made $1 billion. And I'm saying just on its surface, okay, not only did it change the way we look at cinema, because it fundamentally changed the Oscars, not only did it have great acting performances in it, a la Heath Ledger, Christian Bale, everybody else, not only did it have the action you wanted, but it had the love triangle and the drama there. Okay, it was a mixture of everything, and it was combined so well. And I think the last thing is this: no one had a plan. No one had a plan. He had a plan when he went into pitches to Warner Brothers. So, Dad says, so if this is a perfect movie, is Bale a perfect Batman and Ledger a perfect Joker? Um, Interesting. I would say, see, the thing about this, Dad, is this: you've had so many different iterations of the character. I think for what no one wanted, this was a perfect. Okay, well, I'll say this much. Who is mine? Okay, so let me answer the first question. I think that for what no one wanted, this is a perfect Batman. For him, for the Joker, I think that it's a perfect Joker for him, for Nolan's, because you can go back to Jack Nicholson, okay, and say, oh, that was a perfect because that was a comic bookish type of thing. And the same thing, Tim Burton wanted that, right? That's what he was going for. Michael Keaton was a good Batman for what he wanted. So it depends on what the director is looking for. Because I don't think there's any one perfect Batman or Joker. I mean, I think that Heath Ledger is always going to be on the top of everybody's list to play Joker. Everybody. I mean, we've had 4 different people, including television, play Joker. Okay. I mean, I'm not even talking the animated, but animated is a whole other thing. I'm talking about you've had Heath Ledger, you've had Jack Nicholson, you've had Jared Leto, you've had, others. So, yeah, I think that, yeah, I could see it. I could see it. Now, who is mine? Once again, I think it's when you grew up. Um, I think that, yeah, I mean, see, the 66, to your point, the 66 Joker of Cesar Romano was perfect because it was campy. It was, everything else. I loved his Joker. I loved his Joker. Okay. And that's the kind of Joker that Nicholson was playing. It was off the wall and, zany and everything else. Whereas Heath Ledger was more grounded. If I had to choose one Joker, oh, I'm choosing Heath Ledger's without a doubt. Without a doubt. Because he can be funny, but maniacal too. He can be narcissistic, but, so I would choose Ledger's. A Batman? And by the way, I totally forgot about Ben Affleck, but, but I would say, I would probably say Christian Bale. I mean, I've seen every single Batman movie that there has been. from Batman to Batman Forever to Batman and Robin to The Batman to the Dark Knight trilogy, everything. So the good, bad, and indifferent. I think Bale really, and that was the other thing too about it. This is the last thing I'll say is we got the right mixture. One problem I think a lot of people had with the new film that just came out was that we didn't see enough Bruce Wayne. That film, for what it is 85 to 90% Batman. Okay, we get maybe three different scenes or 4 different scenes with Bruce. We get the scene at the very beginning when he's coming back. Okay, he takes off the mask. We get the scene where he's analyzing the data and, Alfred comes down and starts talking to him. We get the scene where Alfred's at the table trying to figure out the cipher. And then we get the funeral scene. That's it. Those are the only 4 scenes in that film that involve Bruce Wayne. Everything else is Batman. And you could even go and say 95-5, but it's like 90-10. And I think that's what people had a problem. Not to say that's bad, but one thing that this movie had, that was really good is you saw the juxtaposition of there was just enough Batman to Bruce Wayne. So whenever we had Batman for, I'd say, an extended period of time, we got Bruce Wayne. Okay? So take the interrogation scene, let's say. Have I ever done a video comparing the Batmans and the Jokers? I actually did a podcast years ago. I don't have it anymore, but I actually, when Dawn of Justice was coming out, I did a whole "Who is your favorite Batman?" And I'll see if I can try and find it. But I did a whole thing about who was your favorite Batman, right? Now, mind you, this is before Ben Affleck came in the mix too. So, but yeah, I never did one for Joker. I did one for Batman though, but I have, and it's always interesting. But so that's the other thing about this too is that whenever you get Batman for a long period of time, you get Bruce after. So, for example, as I said, you get the interrogation scene, right? After everything's blown up and everything. We get Bruce after, okay? And you see this time after time after time. So he mixes it up really, really well. And we get almost 50-50 Batman Bruce. And we see that throughout the whole film. I mean, for example, the party scene, if we're going to go down that way, okay? The party scene is one of those things where, he comes into the party as Bruce Wayne. And of course, the Joker comes in and boom, we get Batman immediately. So there's that great juxtaposition there. But this movie, there's a reason why, I think, and mind you, it's all subjective, but this is a perfect movie. I couldn't, and look, this was either voted or in the top 2 or 3 voted best films of the 2000s. I mean, think about the thousands of films that came out during the 2000s. This was voted one of the greatest films of the 2000s. So this isn't just me speaking. This is a lot of critics, a lot of pundits. But I think it's a perfect movie. And here's the other thing. It's a movie no matter where you are in the film. Let's say you're flipping through the channels on a weekend and you see this. You go, oh, and you can stop in and watch it. This isn't a scene where like, oh, okay, I don't like this scene, I'll come back. You can sit down and watch this movie. There's only a handful of films you can do that with. Okay? The Dark Knight, Silence of the Lambs, Captain America Winter Soldier, Empire Strikes Back, which, by the way, we've all done. Okay? Social Network. I mean, all those films I just named, we've done here in the Perfect Movie Series. So That's why I want to do this, because these films, A, should be celebrated, but B, to have, and mind you, there is no such thing as a perfect film, okay? But widely celebrated as one of the best. It's what I'm doing with this series is I'm taking everybody's master class and putting it in. So says, I just wish we got a little more Two-Face. There's more to Harvey Dent's story we didn't see. No one would knock it out of the park. I think, to your point, Dad, I think that it might have been just the right amount of Harvey Dent or Two-Face, because don't forget, Joker is your main villain here, right? I mean, he had set up the Joker at the end of Batman Begins, right? When Gordon's on the roof and he's like, "Oh, I found this. This is his card," and he flips it over. He's like, "Oh, I'll look into it." Okay, so he had set up the Joker. Okay, so he was going to be the main villain. Dent, okay, and Two-Face rather, was a proxy. He was always that sub guy. He was a villain, but he wasn't the big bad, if you will. How they, I mean, look, he was an integral part of the whole lore. How they set it up was brilliant, because the only way you could really do it is have a love triangle type of thing. He turns, and then he's fighting his inner demons, and then of course he turns to Two-Face and wants to wreak havoc. So I think I could see that we didn't get enough of him, because the thing is that Two-Face is one of those characters. I agree with you. He is a very intricate, he's a very deep character. But I would say this: I don't think you could really hinge a whole movie on. Do you know what I mean? Because the Joker is one of those characters that you could just hinge a whole movie on, right? I don't think, because what you would have to do is you'd have to have this long drawn out process of, let's say, him running for election. I mean, by the time we meet him, he's already DA. Okay. So he would have to go through the election and, have struggles with that and everything else. And then, Rachel and Bruce and everything else. So by the time we got to the third act, when he does become Two-Face, I think a lot of people would be bored. So it's not like you have, I mean, he would have to become Two-Face immediately in the film if he was going to be your villain, your main villain. So I think that the fact that he actually was a side villain is really good. I do agree with you, though. I think he could knock it out of the park. Um, and it's one of those things where I think that if given the chance, he could. But I don't know if because when you think of all of the different villains that Batman has, right? He has, so he has the Joker, okay? He has the Penguin, he has the Riddler, he has um, Two-Face, he has Mr. Freeze, and I mean, if you want to put Catwoman in there, okay, Catwoman, excuse me, and then you have, maybe one or two other villains. He's kind of low on the list. So if he were a Riddler, like that's why Matt Reeves selected the Riddler for this last Batman movie, because he could carry a movie. I don't think, and this, mind you, this is just my opinion, I don't think Two-Face could carry a movie unless, maybe, and that's the thing. It's such a quick turn, if you will, and how it happens, right? So I don't know. I could see it. I don't know. I mean, maybe you could have done a Two-Face movie all by itself, but that would have been hard. That would have been very, very hard. So, but I understand your point, though. I get it, because, you want to see Two-Face but you don't want it to. And that's the other thing too. With Ledger's performance, with the Joker's performance and what he did, it would kind of take away from it too. I think that, and that's what I mean. Aaron Eckhart does not get enough credit for what he did as Two-Face and Harvey Dent. I mean, there's only been, as I said, top of the show, top of the video, there's only been a few people to do that, to be able to carry two different kind of roles. I'm thinking of Arm & Hammer in The Social Network. I'm thinking of Tom Hardy in Legend. I'm thinking of Michael Fassbender in Prometheus. So this is kind of rarefied air there. So undefined air there. So I understand what you mean. And it's one of those things where, and I love the team up aspect, right? And that's the other thing too. We don't see them like team up together. It's not like what was the one? Batman and Robin? It's not like Batman and Robin, where Riddler and Two-Face are teaming up to try and defeat Batman. No. Riddler has his own, or Two-Face has his own agenda. And that's the thing. Joker has his own agenda. He wants to kill the Batman. Two-Face is out for revenge against the people that harmed him. So that could be another reason why he didn't really land, at least with you. Here's a hot take. Does Heath Ledger passing away affect the reception of the movie? If he was still alive, what would the implications be? I think that I think so. I do. Now, that being said, he would have still won the Oscar. Hands down, no doubt in my mind. I think that if he were still here with us today, looking back, I think people would say, if they were going to do a Heath Ledger ranking, every single one of those people would have the Joker one at the at the top. I think that when you always lose actors and actresses young that are popular, okay, I'm talking about like a Heath Ledger, I'm talking about like a River Phoenix, I'm talking about even Elvis Presley, I'm talking about James Dean. They are all revered that much more. They were revered when they were alive, but they were revered that much more. Okay. Michael Jackson. I mean, when you have artists and performers that do pass away young, it absolutely takes away. There is that lore about it, if you will. So, like, this was his last performance. This is the way he's going to be remembered. Okay, I mean, yes, he was in The Patriot. Yes, he was in Brokeback Mountain. Yes, he was in several other films. But this is what he's remembered for. So yes, I would say to your point, it definitely does affect it. But him carrying the film like this, it goes without saying he would have won the Academy Award. I mean, unfortunately, we'll never know. But it's one of those things where I think it does. I think it does. I think it does really. The reception of his performance, it really does do it, because being the last one, you always remember the last thing an actor or actress is in, or a director did, because that's the freshest in your mind. Okay, whether it's Heath Ledger with the Joker, or whether it's whoever it is, so yes, I to answer the short answer to the question is this: it definitely does affect it, but I'll say this: I don't think it affects it to the point of there are so many other good things with this movie that this is just, it's way down here, so to speak. I mean, you have the action, you have the love triangle, you have the drama, you have the Batman, you have Joker is down here, but it's all combined. He's one of the ingredients that makes a dish really, really good. That's what he is. And he's really, really good. So, but yeah. So I think that's what I'll say to that, because he's just, I mean, he's an amazing actor, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us. So, um, but on that front, what I'll say is this: um, this is an amazing movie. This is a perfect movie, in my opinion, and I think that, you know, we're gonna. It's fascinating because this is the 15th year anniversary of this movie, right? So you could kind of consider this like a 15-year anniversary and a perfect movie. Speaking of a near perfect movie, and you know, and as I said at the top, I'm going to be doing this, and that's Across the Spider Verse. I had so much fun with this. Um, Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate you stopping by. You're going to have a blast when you see this. I can't wait for you to come back and tell me all of the things. Now, I'm curious. You saw Into the Spider Verse, right? I'm sorry, in, inside inside the Spider Verse. You saw Inside the Spider Verse, Dad. So, um, you saw the first film. So you're going to have so much fun with this. Now, a couple quick questions. Number one, did you see the first film? And number two, which format, if you have, which format did you see it? Did you see it in 2D, or did you see it in IMAX? Or okay, so you saw the first film. Which format did you see it in? What do you remember? Because the one regret I have is not seeing this in IMAX first. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can't wait to go back and see it again, but I wish I had seen this in IMAX first. um, and so 2D, okay, yeah. So yeah, okay. You're gonna now. Are you gonna go see this in I? So, okay, so you don't have IMAX. Okay, you're absolutely gonna love this. I cannot wait for you to see this, because it is just, it's so good. It's so good, and you're gonna, the ending, and I'm not gonna give anything away, okay, because I want you to thoroughly enjoy this, and you'll watch the spoiler cast later. Is you're gonna be like, I want it now. I want it now. But yeah, so I am gonna be doing. Come back and join us. I know Dad's gonna be going to see this later on, but come back and enjoy um, Across the Spider Verse, because I'm gonna be talking about it in full. All spoilers out there. Everything's out there, and this movie was just phenomenal, and it's gonna have legs, and it's gonna do really well. So that is going to do it for the perfect movies. Um, so that was June, and by the way, guys, not only June, go back and look at all the other movies that we've done. This is what kind of content I'm bringing you on a monthly basis with this. I mean, starting out with Silence of the Lambs, we did Captain America Winter Soldier in February. We did Heat in March. We did The Social Network in April. We did, something else in May. Okay. We've got this in June. These are the films that I'm going to be bringing: Spotlight, Pulp Fiction, all of these movies as the perfect movies. Um, so stay tuned for the spoiler cast. This is, going to be the second spoiler cast I'm going to be doing. Of course, the first one was Fast X. I am going to be getting this podcast back shortly, hopefully in the next couple of days. I'll be putting all those, that is all the audio from all the shows from the last 2.5 weeks, or 3 weeks, including spoiler cast, excluding this one, but I'm going to put up Creed 3 and Fast X and everything else. So that was going to be there. I'm going to start editing those other ones, so I'm caught up. So we have that. So if you can't catch the show, guys, you'll always have the audio show. Go to your favorite podcasting site, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you'll be able to check it out there. Mission Impossible. I'm going to sit down probably tomorrow and watch another Mission Impossible movie. That will be Mission Impossible 3. I think, arguably one of the best films of the franchise. So that will be good. That's all going to be leading up to Dead Reckoning on the 12th. And there's an interesting story. Come back tomorrow, guys, because there's a fascinating story between Oppenheimer and Tom Cruise is not happy. So stay tuned for that. But nonetheless, that the Mission Impossible rewatch series. Um, and don't forget, guys, so there's a couple different ways you can help me out. Number one is hitting that join button. And I know some people have already. Thank you. You were one of them, Dad. Number two, Patreon. I'm good. So right now, I'm going to have 2 movies up there for the month of June. It's going to be Training Day. Okay. That's going to be Rewatch Wednesdays. That's $10 a month. Okay. And then Mob Mondays. And that's, I'm going to pick out another Mob movie. I think I know what I'm going to do. And that's going to be $5 a month. So you can do that. As I said, hit the join button. It's only a couple bucks a month. Or Father's Day is coming up. Want a really good Father's Day gift? T-shirt or a mug. Really good at the store. Um, and then, yeah, there's super chats and everything else and all this stuff. So, and I'm bringing you all this stuff, guys. So, if nothing else, please hit that like and subscribe button. That's going to get this out. And look, don't take it from me. Watch the trailer on the channel. If he doesn't get you interested in the channel, I don't know what will. Okay, so that's going to be about it. I'll see everybody back in a couple hours. Dad, you have a good time at the movies, and I will see everybody later. So do the 3 things you need to do: be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the weekend. I am David Steele, and you have been watching Real Talks. Bye-bye, guys.